How to become fluent in English in just 30 days. Impossible, right? Let me tell you something you never believed in. Hey everyone. Today, I want you to meet someone very special. And that someone is me. My name is Daisy, and I'm 22 years old. For as long as I can remember, I was that person who felt too scared to speak English. Whenever the chance came to speak in English, I would get nervous, my heart would race, and my mind would go blank. I would forget simple words or mix up my sentences. It felt like my tongue was tied. It was really frustrating because I knew English was important. I wanted to talk to people from different countries, watch movies without subtitles, travel, and maybe even find a better job. But every time I tried to speak, I felt like I was trapped in my own head. I wanted to express myself, but the words just wouldn't come out smoothly. It was like my brain and mouth were not on the same team. This feeling made me avoid conversations in English whenever I could. If someone started speaking English, I would quickly find a way to change the topic or stay quiet. I remember one time in a cafe when a group of tourists asked me for directions. I panicked and gave them the wrong street name because I couldn't think fast enough in English. After they left, I felt awful. That moment stuck with me for days. I realized I needed to do something about this fear and hesitation. I wanted to be able to speak English confidently and clearly. I wanted to feel proud when I talked instead of embarrassed. But how? Where should I start? I had tried a few times before, downloaded apps, watched YouTube videos, read books, but none of it seemed to stick. I needed a real change, a clear goal, and a plan that would actually work. One evening, after a long day, I sat down and looked at myself in the mirror. I said, "Daisy, you have to stop being scared. You can do this. You will learn English. Not someday, but soon." That's when I made a bold decision. I would become fluent in English in just 30 days. Yes, only 30 days. I know, it sounds crazy. I even laughed at myself when I said it out loud. 30 days? That's impossible. But deep inside, I felt a spark of hope. I thought, if I focus, practice every day, and don't give up, maybe I can make it happen. After all, learning anything new takes time, but 30 days is long enough to build a strong foundation and start speaking fluently. The next morning, I woke up full of energy and excitement. I felt like I was starting a new chapter in my life. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I would make mistakes, stumble over words, and sometimes feel frustrated. But this time, I was ready to face those challenges with courage. I started thinking about what fluency really means to me. For me, it wasn't about speaking perfect English with no mistakes. It was about being able to express myself naturally without fear. It was about having fun while learning and being able to join conversations confidently. I imagined myself talking to new friends, watching movies without subtitles, and even giving presentations in English at work. That day, I wrote down my goal on a piece of paper: become fluent in English in 30 days. I put it on my wall so I could see it every morning and remind myself why I was doing this. This simple step made the goal feel real and gave me motivation to keep going. As I thought more about my journey, I realized I needed a clear plan. Just saying I want to be fluent wasn't enough. I had to break it down into daily actions. I needed to practice listening, speaking, reading, and writing every day. I needed to find materials that were interesting and easy to understand. And most importantly, I needed to create a habit, because habits help us do things without thinking too much. I was a little nervous about starting. What if I failed? What if I gave up after a few days? But I told myself to take it one day at a time. Just 30 days. That's all. If I kept trying, I knew I would see progress. So, with my heart full of hope and a plan in mind, I began my journey. And this is where the real story starts. How I made that plan, stuck to it, and what I did every single day to become fluent in English in 30 days. But before I tell you about my plan, I want you to remember something. If you have a big goal, breaking it down and making a daily routine can make it easier. The next step in my story is about setting my goal and making a practical plan that anyone can follow. The first step was to make a plan. I couldn't just say, I want to be fluent without a plan. That's like wanting to run a marathon without training. I spent hours online looking for simple, practical ways to improve quickly. I read blogs, watched YouTube videos, and even joined a few online forums where people shared their English learning stories. Everyone seemed to agree on one thing: practice every day, no matter how small the effort. That's when I realized my goal had to be clear and realistic. Becoming fluent overnight was impossible, but what if I committed to practicing every day for 30 days? 30 days felt like a manageable challenge, long enough to see real progress, but short enough to stay motivated. Here's what I decided. Every single day, I would practice speaking out loud. I knew that listening and reading were important, but speaking, that's where most people get stuck. So I made a promise to myself to speak English for at least 20 minutes every day. If I couldn't find someone to talk to, I would speak to myself in front of the mirror. It sounded silly at first, but it really helped build my confidence. I found English videos I loved, funny shows, cool interviews, anything I could listen to and repeat. One of my favorites was a simple American sitcom with everyday conversations. Watching these made learning feel like entertainment, not work. I'd pause, rewind, and repeat phrases until I could say them naturally. This helped me get used to how native speakers talk, their rhythm, their tone, and even their slang. I also picked easy stories to read because I wanted to get used to the sounds and words. Reading helped me connect spoken and written English. I chose books and articles that matched my level, avoiding anything too difficult that would frustrate me. Reading aloud was part of my daily routine. It improved my pronunciation and made me feel like I was really speaking the language. And every day before bed, I wrote a few sentences about what I did or how I felt in English. This writing habit helped me organize my thoughts in English and reinforced new vocabulary and grammar without making it feel like a boring lesson. Sometimes I wrote funny things that happened during the day or simple goals for tomorrow. This personal connection made learning more meaningful. The key was consistency. No excuses. I promised myself 30 days of daily practice no matter what. Some days were easier than others. When I was tired or busy, I would do just 5 or 10 minutes instead of 20, but I never skipped a day. That's important because even a little practice adds up over time. To keep track, I used a calendar where I marked each day I practiced. Watching the chain of completed days grow motivated me not to break it. It became like a game, and I wanted to keep my streak going. This simple habit kept me accountable and made the process fun. But even with a plan, I knew I couldn't expect magic overnight. Learning a language is like building a muscle. It takes time and effort. I wasn't aiming to sound perfect from day one. Instead, I focused on progress, not perfection. I also prepared myself mentally for some setbacks. Sometimes I would feel stuck or frustrated when I couldn't remember a word or when my pronunciation wasn't clear. But I told myself those moments were part of the journey, not the end of it. As the days passed, I began to notice small changes. I understood more in conversations, and I wasn't afraid to try speaking, even if I made mistakes. My confidence grew little by little, and that made a huge difference. This plan was my roadmap. It gave me direction and hope, but I won't lie, it wasn't always easy. There were moments I felt discouraged, and that's where the real test began. What would I do when things got tough? How would I stay motivated? That's where the real story starts, my challenges and how I face them every day. Because having a plan is one thing, but putting it into action is where the true learning happens. The first step was to make a plan. I couldn't just say, I want to be fluent, without a plan. That's like wanting to run a marathon without training. I spent hours online, looking for simple, practical ways to improve quickly. Here's what I decided. Every single day, I would practice speaking out loud. I found English videos I loved, funny shows, cool interviews, anything I could listen to and repeat. I also picked easy stories to read because I wanted to get used to the sounds and words. And every day before bed, I wrote a few sentences about what I did or how I felt in English. The key was consistency. No excuses. I promised myself 30 days of daily practice no matter what. But making a plan was just the start. I knew that to really improve, I needed to understand what kind of learner I was. Was I better at listening or reading? Did I learn faster when I spoke with others or when I practiced alone? So I experimented. Some days I would watch a funny clip from a comedy show, pausing after each sentence to repeat it out loud. Other days, I read children's stories because their language was simple and clear, which made it easier to understand and remember new words. I also kept a notebook where I wrote down new words or phrases I heard during the day. Writing them helped me remember better than just listening or reading. One of the best things I did was recording myself. At first, it felt awkward and a little embarrassing, but when I listened to my recordings, I could hear exactly where I stumbled or sounded unnatural. This helped me focus on those tricky parts. For example, I found out I was mixing up similar sounds like ship and sheep. So, I practiced those sounds carefully, repeating tongue twisters and sounds that challenged me. This kind of focused practice was new to me and made a huge difference. I also created a simple daily routine. In the morning, I would spend 10-15 minutes listening to English podcasts or radio shows while getting ready for the day. During lunch, I read a short story or article. In the evening, I watched a favorite TV show or movie scene, repeating lines and practicing pronunciation. Before bed, I wrote a short diary entry, just a few sentences about what I did or how I felt. This routine helped me stay organized and made learning feel natural instead of stressful. Another important part of my plan was setting small, clear goals. Instead of saying, I want to speak English perfectly, which felt too big and scary, I focused on little wins. For example, one day my goal was to learn 5 new words and use them in sentences. Another day, it was to speak for 5 minutes about my favorite hobby without stopping. These small goals gave me motivation and made progress feel real. When I achieved them, I felt excited and ready to keep going. I also gave myself permission to make mistakes. Before this journey, I was so afraid of sounding wrong that I rarely spoke English. But I realized that mistakes are part of learning. Every time I made a mistake, I learned something new. So instead of feeling bad, I started to laugh at my errors. This helped me relax and speak more freely. Sometimes I even shared funny mistakes with friends, which made the process enjoyable and less lonely. Of course, life got busy sometimes. There were days I felt tired or distracted. But because I had promised myself no excuses, I found small ways to practice anyway. If I only had 5 minutes, I used those minutes to say a few sentences aloud or review my word list. I learned that even short practice sessions count if you do them regularly. The idea was simple. It's better to do a little every day than to do a lot only once in a while. As the days passed, I started to notice changes. I was no longer scared to speak English. I felt more comfortable listening to native speakers and understanding what they said. But I also knew the hardest part was still ahead. Practicing alone is one thing. But what about real conversations? Would I be able to keep speaking when people talked fast? Would I lose confidence in front of others? These questions made me a bit nervous. I was ready to face new challenges, but I didn't know exactly what they would be. So I took a deep breath and prepared myself for the next phase of my journey, facing the challenges and practicing with real people. This is when things got interesting and sometimes a little scary. But I was determined to keep going. Let me be honest, it was not all sunshine and rainbows. The first few days were really, really tough. When I first started speaking English, out loud, I sounded awkward, like a robot trying to speak. My voice was stiff, and I felt like I was repeating words without any real feeling. Sometimes I mixed up words, and other times I completely forgot simple phrases I had just learned the day before. It was frustrating and honestly embarrassing. One particular day stands out in my memory. I decided to record myself reading a simple sentence out loud. When I played the recording back, I couldn't believe how different it sounded from native speakers I had been listening to in videos. My pronunciation was off, and my tone was flat and unnatural. I cringed a little, but then started laughing at how robotic I sounded. That moment helped me realize something important. Mistakes are proof that I'm learning. They aren't failures, they're part of the journey. Instead of giving up, I chose to keep going. I told myself, it's okay to sound awkward now. Every expert was once a beginner. To make my practice more fun and less boring, I began trying some creative ways to learn. Sometimes I imitated funny accents from movies or cartoons. I even acted out dialogues, pretending I was a movie star on a big stage. This playful practice helped me feel less stressed and more excited about learning. Each day, I practiced for at least an hour. I listened carefully to native speakers and repeated their words, paying close attention to their tone, rhythm, and speed. I focused on common expressions and simple sentences that people actually use every day, not just long, difficult words. This made learning feel practical and useful. I also used my phone to record short videos of myself speaking. Watching these videos helped me spot mistakes I didn't notice while speaking. It was like having my own personal teacher. I could see when I was mumbling, mispronouncing words, or speaking too fast. After that, I practiced those parts again and again until I got them right. It was hard work, but every small improvement gave me a boost of confidence. Some days were harder than others. There were moments when I felt like quitting because I didn't see quick progress. I compared myself to others who spoke English better and wondered if I could ever catch up. But I reminded myself that learning a language is not a race. It's a journey with ups and downs, and every step forward counts. One trick that helped me a lot was watching funny English videos or TV shows. Humor made learning enjoyable. When I understood a joke or a funny phrase, I felt like I had won a small victory. I would try to say the jokes aloud and mimic the funny voices. This not only improved my pronunciation, but also taught me natural expressions and slang that textbooks don't always explain. To improve my vocabulary, I kept a small notebook with me. Every time I heard a new word or phrase, I wrote it down with its meaning and an example sentence. At night, I reviewed these notes and tried to use the new words in sentences of my own. This helped me remember words better and made me feel like I was building my own personal dictionary. I didn't limit myself to just listening and speaking. I also read easy stories, news articles, and blogs written in simple English. Reading helped me understand how sentences are formed and how words connect naturally. It also improved my spelling and gave me ideas for what to say in conversations. What surprised me the most was how much my brain started to change. I began thinking in English instead of translating from my native language. This was a huge step because it made speaking faster and more natural. I found myself dreaming in English, sometimes which made me smile. It was like my mind was becoming an English speaker, not just a learner. As the days passed, I started noticing small but important improvements. I could speak longer sentences without stopping to think. I understood movies and songs better. I even got compliments from friends who said my English sounded more natural. Those moments made all the hard work worth it. But the biggest motivation was the joy of communication. When I could express my thoughts clearly, it felt amazing. It opened new doors to meeting people, making friends, and learning about different cultures. I realized English was not just a subject in school, but a powerful tool for life. Through this experience, I learned an important lesson. Practice is the key. Not just any practice, but daily, focused practice. Even if it's just a few minutes, doing it every day makes a huge difference. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. They are part of the process. Learning alone can be lonely, so I told my friends about my goal. To my surprise, some of them joined me. We started having little English chats, sometimes over coffee or video calls. They didn't judge my mistakes. Instead, they helped me and cheered me on. It was like having a team. With their support, I felt less shy and more confident. Day by day, I found myself speaking longer sentences without freezing. I could understand movies better, and reading. English became easier and fun. It wasn't magic, just hard work and a little help from friends. But let me take you back a bit, because this part of my journey wasn't just about friends randomly popping up to help. It was about how reaching out changed everything for me. When I first started, I was so focused on practicing alone that I didn't realize how important having a support system was. At first I thought, I just need to practice by myself. I'll do this on my own. But soon I noticed that sometimes, no matter how hard I tried, I felt stuck. I would get nervous, forget words, or feel like I was going in circles. That's when I remembered something a teacher once said, language is about connection. English isn't just about grammar or vocabulary, it's about communicating with people. So, I opened up. I told my closest friends about my 30-day goal. I was a bit nervous. What if they laughed? What if they thought it was silly? But they didn't. Instead, they got curious and excited. Some of my friends were already a bit fluent in English, and a few were beginners like me. That's when the magic started. We made a group chat called English Warriors, where we shared daily sentences, funny videos, and tips. It became a small community, a place where everyone encouraged each other no matter what level they were at. One day, we decided to meet for coffee just to practice speaking together. It was awkward at first. We all stumbled over our words, laughed at each other's funny mistakes, and even joked about how English could be so tricky. But something amazing happened. The more we talked, the more natural it felt. I remember this one conversation where I managed to tell a story without stopping or forgetting words. My heart was pounding with excitement. My friends smiled and clapped, saying, "See? You're getting better every day." Their words meant the world to me. I realized that learning English doesn't have to be a lonely or scary journey. It can be fun, social, and full of support. Besides talking with friends, I started watching movies and shows with them. At first, I needed subtitles, but soon, I could catch words and phrases without them. We would pause scenes and try to say the lines ourselves. This made watching TV so much more exciting. Suddenly, learning felt like a game, not a chore. My confidence grew because I wasn't just memorizing words, I was using them in real conversations. My reading improved too. Instead of boring textbooks, I picked up simple novels, blogs, and even song lyrics. I shared interesting sentences with my friends in our group chat, and they shared back. This back and forth made English feel alive. It wasn't something I did alone. It was something we did together. This social practice helped me realize a big truth. No matter how hard you try, going it alone makes progress slower and less enjoyable. Friends can be your motivation when you want to quit, your sounding board, when you don't know what to say, and your cheerleaders when you succeed. Learning English with friends turned my whole experience around. But this isn't just about having friends around. It's about growing in confidence. At the beginning, I was scared to speak because I thought everyone would judge me. But talking regularly with friends who understood and supported me made that fear fade. I learned that everyone makes mistakes, and that's perfectly okay. They're not failures. They're stepping stones. Slowly but surely, I began to speak. Longer sentences without freezing or losing track. I noticed I was dreaming in English sometimes, That was a big sign I was improving. Movies that once felt impossible to understand became clearer. Reading wasn't a struggle anymore. It was fun and relaxing. I felt proud of how far I'd come. Looking back, this part of my journey was one of the most important. The support of friends was the fuel that kept my fire burning. Hard work alone can take you far, but with a team cheering you on, you can go even farther. This experience taught me that learning English is not just a personal challenge. It's a shared adventure. Learning. Alone can be lonely, so I told my friends about my goal. To my surprise, some of them joined me. We started having little English chats, sometimes over coffee or video calls. They didn't judge my mistakes. Instead, they helped me and cheered me on. It was like having a team. With their support, I felt less shy and more confident. Day by day, I found myself speaking longer sentences without freezing. I could understand movies better, and reading English became easier and fun. It wasn't magic, just hard work and a little help from friends. At the beginning of my journey, I thought I could do this all by myself. I imagined sitting in my room, practicing speaking and listening to English videos alone. But very quickly, I realized something important. Learning a language is not just about individual effort. It's also about connection and communication. You need people, real people, to practice with, to laugh with, and sometimes even to stumble with. So, I decided to share my goal with my closest friends. Honestly, I felt a little nervous telling them because I wasn't sure how they would react. Would they think it was silly? Would they judge me for my poor English? But when I finally told them, their reaction surprised me. Instead of laughing or making fun, they got interested. Some even told me they wanted to improve their English too. That was the moment I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. Suddenly, I was not alone in this journey. We started small. At first, we simply sent each other voice notes in English, just to practice speaking without pressure. Sometimes, during breaks at school or work, we'd sit together and talk about simple things. Our favorite movies, plans for the weekend, or even what we had for breakfast. These conversations felt different from before. I wasn't afraid to make mistakes because my friends were supportive and kind. They didn't interrupt or correct me harshly. Instead, they gently pointed out how I could say something better. That made me want to keep trying. Then, we started doing video calls where we practiced English for 15 to 20 minutes every day. I remember one night, we all sat in our rooms but talked together online like a small English club. We laughed when someone mixed up words or pronounced things funny. Those moments made learning fun. It felt less like a task and more like hanging out with friends. I realized that when you enjoy the process, learning happens naturally. Because of my friends, I began to feel braver. I spoke in longer sentences without freezing. I stopped worrying so much about being perfect. One day, while watching a movie, in English, I understood almost every word without subtitles. That was a huge moment for me. I could feel my confidence growing every day. I also started reading books and articles in English that interested me, like stories about travel and music. Reading became exciting, not a chore. The words I learned during our conversations suddenly made more sense when I saw them in print. It was like the pieces of a puzzle coming together. Looking back, I realized that none of this was magic or luck. It was just consistent hard work mixed with a little help from friends who believed in me. They made the journey less lonely and more joyful, and because I wasn't afraid to make mistakes or ask for help, I was able to progress faster than I ever imagined. My English skills improved so much that I even helped a new friend who was just starting to learn. I shared with them some of the simple tips and fun ways I used to practice. That felt amazing, like passing on a gift. Now, after 30 days of hard work and friendship, I'm not just fluent, I'm proud. Proud of my effort, proud of my progress, and proud that I never gave up. My journey taught me that learning English, or anything new, isn't about being perfect on day one. It's about trying, failing, laughing, and trying again with people by your side. So, if you want to learn English faster, find friends who will support you. Speak with them, laugh with them, and don't be scared of mistakes. Every step you take brings you closer to fluency. Trust me, it's worth it. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you found it helpful or inspiring, please like, comment, and subscribe to The Tone English. I want to know, what's your English goal? Write it down in the comments below. Don't forget to share this video with your friends who want to get better at English too. Together, we can all become fluent.